Hi, today I am reviewing a book called Alice by Christina Henry. In a warren of crumbling buildings and desperate people called the Old City, there stands a hospital with cinderblock walls which echo with the screams of poor souls inside. In the hospital there is a woman. Her hair, once blonde, hangs in tangles down her back. She doesn't remember why she's in such a terrible place. Just a tea party long ago, long ears and blood. Then one night, a fire at the hospital gives the woman a chance to escape. Tumbling out of the hole that imprisoned her, leaving her free to uncover the truth about what happened to her all those years ago. Only something else has escaped with her. Something dark, something powerful. And to find the truth, she will have to track this beast to the very heart of the old city, where the rabbit waits for his Alice. Now, when I went on to Waterstones to buy some books, I saw Alice by Christina Henry, and I love anything to do with Alice in Wonderland, and I thought I'll give it a go. I've read a lot of other books which are Alice in Wonderland related, so I thought let's add this to my collection and try another one. This book, when I brought it, told me that it was dark, and it does say creepy and disturbing, but I didn't realise it was going to be so dark. The author writes this book really, really well. The language she uses, how she uses it, she's very, very good, okay? She describes the characters extremely well, and the build up to the characters. You don't always see the character in front of you. She doesn't describe the character that's in front of you, she describes around that character before you actually know what that character looks like. There's a character in here, and you briefly know what this character looks like, but you don't really know what that character really looks like until near the end of the book, and it allows your imagination to work, which is what Wonderland and Alice is about. That's what Lewis Carroll decided to do when he created Alice in Wonderland. When he created Alice in Wonderland, he wanted you to use your imagination to this world of wonder, and that is what Christina Henry definitely does. So this book is very dark and disturbing, and I wouldn't say it was for younger readers. It's more of an adult kind of book, so yeah, be wary of the book. Have a look on Goodreads and have a look at some of the reviews as well, because I read this book then looked at Goodreads, and I'm not saying I wouldn't have read it, I'm not saying I wouldn't like it, because it is really good if you can get rid of the very disturbing kind of bits in the book. But other than that, it's a really, really good book. And there is a second book to it, to the series, called The Red Queen. This is The Red Queen, and I'm over halfway through. And that is going to be next week's review, okay? So this is a 2-week review again, like The Secret Fire and The Secret City. So back to the book. So, not really a spoiler, but it's just a bit of detail about the book. There's 2 cities, there's the old city and there's the new city. So Alice comes from the new city, as you would imagine, and she is obviously in this hospital in the old city, and in the old city it's basically like an asylum for those that have gone crazy. So Alice comes out of the new city and goes into the old city, and that is where she meets this rabbit. And when she escapes the old city, she basically goes crazy, and her family look at her and think, they look at her and say, you need to go to the old city, into the asylum. You need to go to this asylum which is in the old city, because we don't want you in the new city because you're crazy. So that's where she ends up, and she's been there for 10 years now, and she's 26 now, and along where she is, next door to her, there's this man called Hatcher, and he is supposed to be like the Mad Hatter. He is the only character in the book that has got a different name to those that you know. So obviously Alice is Alice, Hatcher is the Mad Hatter. And as you leave as they leave the asylum and they go into the old city, Hatcher doesn't remember everything, but there's part of him, like he'll be walking down a road and it will be familiar to him and he'll know where he's going. Go on to see his grandmother, and they stay with her for a day or so, and they get cleaned up and everything. And he keeps telling Alice about a Jabberwocky. So in the asylum at the bottom there is this creature that stays there and is in the asylum along with them, and this is called the Jabberwocky. So Hatcher is sort of like a seer, he can see things, and he senses that this Jabberwocky is there, and the Jabberwocky is sorry, I keep saying Jabberwocky because that's from Alice in Wonderland, the film by Tim Burton, because she says Jabberwocky baby. So yeah, it is a Jabberwock, but I'm going to call it Jabberwocky because it sounds cute. And the Jabberwock is not cute, so it just kind of makes you feel not scary. Okay, so they go on to see his grandmother, and whilst they're there, she basically tells them that you're the only one that can stop the Jabberwocky. And Alice doesn't believe that, and Hatcher's like, yep, sure, we'll go destroy this Jabberwocky. And Alice is just like, okay, well, I'm basically stuck with you now. So they go off on this adventure basically to destroy the Jabberwocky. So in this old city, slight spoiler, but not a spoiler, but it's up to you. You can make your mind up if you want to see this as a spoiler. So within the city there are 4 gangs, 4 groups, okay, with these leaders. The first one that they encounter is Cheshire, which is obviously the Cheshire Cat, and he lives in this cottage which has got like these roses, and it's a lovely, lovely place. It's described really well. They've got a maze in the garden and everything. And they encounter Cheshire, who has the little cakes that make you big and small, because obviously Cheshire can disappear and he's got the magic element to him. And then they meet the caterpillar, which is obviously the caterpillar, and he has the smoke, and they have to go through a tiny little hole to get there, obviously because caterpillars are small. And then there is the walrus, and then there is the carpenter. Now the walrus and the carpenter, I think they were together, and then obviously as the story goes with the oysters and everything, they had an argument and then they split. So there is actually 5, if you don't count them as being one and now being separate. And then obviously there is the rabbit. So Alice has obviously been to the old city, and that is where she encountered the rabbit the first time. So the rabbit is someone that she has in the back of her mind, which she has to face. It's her fear, okay? I don't think that's the right word, but it's her fear. She has to face her fears, and her fear is the rabbit. And the rabbit is the March Hare, because I thought originally that the rabbit was the white rabbit, where she follows him along and she ends up in Wonderland because of the rabbit being late with his watch. But actually this rabbit turns out to be more of the March Hare, so that is probably a spoiler. And Hatcher, who's the Mad Hatter, worked for the rabbit a long, long time ago, so that's where you definitely know that it is the March Hare and the Hatter. And you do meet the white rabbit. He just happens to be a rabbit that has been grown into this enormous size rabbit, and they save him, and then there's a scene where he's off and Alice runs off, and Hatcher's like, where are you going? She's like, to follow the white rabbit, of course. And I really like that. This book is so dark and disturbing, so please, literally, it's so disturbing. If you don't like disturbing stuff, I thought I did until I read this book, and then there are bits that I didn't like about it. But like I said, it is written well, and the second book so far is less disturbing. It's got the blood, it's got the gore, it's got all that stuff in it as well. And it's kind of got a mad love, like a Harley Quinn and Joker, where Hatcher doesn't hurt Alice and Alice doesn't hurt him. It's not like that, but they love each other. There's this connection. I mean, they've been together from the beginning when they first were in the asylum. They escaped together. They've gone through all of these bosses, you know, together, and now they're on to find the next bit. So there is this crazy mad love with each other, and they both know they're crazy, but they love each other, and that's all that they have is each other, because Alice's family don't want to know. Hatcher doesn't have any family now. I mean, he's got his grandmother, but that's it. You know, so they've got each other, and that's all they have. So the only thing missing so far is Dinah. We haven't seen the cat. So the next book, I will give you a spoiler, which is just me gonna read you the back of the book. So don't listen to this part. This is the big spoiler, because I'm going to be telling you about the next book. Just in case you have read Alice and you don't know about the Red Queen, or you want a spoiler for what happens next week. The land outside the old city was supposed to be green, lush and hopeful. A place where Alice could finally rest. No longer the plaything of the rabbit, the pawn of the Cheshire, or the prey of the Jabberwocky. But the verdant fields are nothing but ash, and hope is nowhere to be found. Still Alice and Hatcher are on a mission to find his daughter, a quest they will not forsake, even as it turns them into the deep clutches of the mad White Queen and her goblin, or into the realm of the twisted and cruel Black King. This is a set and the game has begun. Each move brings Alice closer to her destiny, but to win she will need to harness her newfound abilities and ally herself with someone even more powerful, the mysterious and vengeful Red Queen. So that is next week's video. I will be reviewing the Red Queen. So back to Alice, briefly. I don't know what else to say about this book, because there are a lot of disturbing stuff, and it's more of one of those things where you have to read it to really understand what I'm talking about. But I liked how the old city was like a Victorian steampunk kind of thing. It had that kind of vibe around it, where everything seemed dark, and in my mind I imagined it like the dark yellow and black, that kind of vibe. And then obviously the new city, you see like white and blue and pink, and really opposite to each other. And although you still see it as like a Victorian-y steampunk, you just see it as so different from each other. There are magicians in this, but all the magicians apparently have been outcast outside, but you see them in the book. So it has got the magical aspect that Wonderland does have, except it's not called Wonderland, because there is no wonder in this place. It's just this old city that is grimy and disgusting, and this new city which we don't actually see, but you imagine it as rose gardens with afternoon tea with the Queen and things like this. But the old city is nasty, it's horrible. It is what this book is, basically. So give this book a go if you feel like it. I don't have anything bad to say about the good parts of this book, because it was all written well, the author was brilliant. But like I keep saying, it is very dark and disturbing, and it does say that on the back of the book. I loved falling down the rabbit hole with the stark gritty tale. Delightfully disturbing, hugely creepy and brilliantly intensive. The world is nothing like Lewis Carroll ever imagined, and I agree with that 1000%. A deeply unsettling vision that works thanks to Henry's complex characterisation of Alice. So that is my review of Alice by Christina Henry. I'm sorry that it's not very big and spoilery, but yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it, to be honest. I mean, it was a really good book, and I did really enjoy reading it once I started to ignore the dark parts of it. And I definitely think that you have to read this to obviously understand the Red Queen, because there are some bits in the Red Queen that, you know, you have to know about beforehand. And obviously the people in it, Alice and Hatcher, especially Alice, you see the character develop over time. You start to see that all the things she's had to go through is building up to the next book. And if you straight away read the next book, you wouldn't have the emotion, the build up, like some characters in series. You have to have the first few books to get their character really developed, to be able to have the next book to explain about their life and explain why they are the way they are. So you had to have this book. But I definitely think, although I haven't finished the Red Queen yet, and I will finish it for next week, the Red Queen is definitely a lot better than Alice. It's not as dark and disturbing, but it's still got that element to it. And there's new characters that you meet in the book. You've still got the old ones in the back of your mind, but the new characters, for me, are a lot better than the old ones. So thank you again for watching Get Me a Library, and I will see you next week for the review of the Red Queen. Bye!